Seattle Seahawks at the Philadelphia Eagles. There we go. Seahawks minus 2 points in this football game. The game is in Philadelphia. Seahawks are the number 5 seed, failing to win the NFC West in Week 17 versus the San Francisco 49ers. Philadelphia Eagles are the 4 seed, barely winning the NFC East. And I know there's going to be a lot of talk of, well, this game should be in Seattle because Seattle, they had the better record and they were the better team. That's not how the playoff format works, bro. You don't get to be that way. Seattle won a playoff game at 7-9 at home versus the Saints when the Saints were the way better team in the regular season. You can't have it both ways, pal. I just want to let you know. All right, so they played earlier this season. The Seahawks won that game. It was in Philadelphia. So this is the only rematch of this entire season that is taking place in the wild card. This game, though, is different. When looking back at that game, some things that did stick out. Zach Ertz, who is questionable for this game, and I think a game-time decision, had 12 catches. By far, the most important receiver in that game for Carson Wentz. None of them were overly effective, though, but he did get a lot of catches. Wilson was sacked 6 times in the game. Not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, LeBron, not 6 times, baby. 6 times. Carson Wentz threw 2 interceptions and was sacked 3 times. Penny, who is not in this game, ran for 129 yards and a 58-yard touchdown. And I just personally don't think the Seahawks have a guy that can run for a 58-yard touchdown. I'm just going to be honest. Clowney did not play in that game. He is also questionable to play in this game. He did not practice, I believe, today. And also Michael Kendricks also didn't practice today, who's a linebacker for the Seahawks. They are game-time decisions. Zach Ertz is a game-time decision. Lane Johnson should play. Brooks was placed on IR on the offensive line for Philadelphia. This game, I know it sounds completely 100% like ESPN analysis here, and it sounds simple, but Russell Wilson versus Carson Wentz. I know it sounds simple. This is the game because Russell Wilson carries the Seahawks. Carson Wentz, at this point in time, carries the Eagles. And whatever quarterback, I will say, has better protection, whatever quarterback has help from their passing weapons, and whatever quarterback makes the bigger plays in the clutch moments will win this game, in my opinion. And I can't say that for every game this week. I think if, for example, Tom Brady didn't play well, but New England's defense shut Tannehill down, they probably still win, the Patriots. This is the one game I can say where it's the quarterbacks or bust, because both teams, I would say from a roster talent perspective at this point, given the injuries, both of these teams I would say are the least talented in the entire playoff field. From a talent perspective, given their injuries. Once again, I'll say that so you don't get mad at me. There are injuries on both sides, as I brought up. And both teams are playing extremely banged up. The Eagles are a little bit more used to it than the Seahawks, but the Seahawks have been able to fight through it as well. So credit to both teams. I think the Eagles can easily win this game. It depends a lot on how healthy are they. And I think for the Eagles, it always depends on, do they win the line of scrimmage? How does their offensive line play? How does their defensive line play? If the Eagles are able to protect Wentz and get a lot of time, the Seahawks are in trouble. If the Philadelphia defensive line can get after Russell Wilson, the Seahawks are in trouble. And I think both of those things can happen, definitely. On the other side, the Seahawks, why I'm saying if they can protect for Carson Wentz, the Seahawks are in trouble. The offensive line of the Eagles is really good, but the Seahawks secondary is not good, right? The Seahawks secondary, if they are exposed, if they are not able to get a pass rush, they can't play man. They never play man. They can't. And what's the number one thing you need to do versus the Eagles to shut them down? Play man. Because they have no receivers. They have guys off the street. We're talking about a Seahawks defense that only exclusively basically plays zone. Because they don't have the guys to play man. They just don't, and they can't. So that being said, if there's that protection and Clowney is not in the face of Carson Wentz and Reed is not in the face of Carson Wentz, then Carson Wentz can have a good game. I have no doubt about it, and I think they could steadily move the ball down the field. There's not going to be any big plays by Carson Wentz. You're not going to see any 30 to 40-yard receptions. I doubt it. But I think you'll see a lot of 5 to 15-yard catches from the Eagles, whether that's to their running backs, Scott, Howard. I don't know if Sanders will be playing in this game. I hope so. He's a good player. Whether that's to their tight ends. Dallas Goedert's been really, really good. He'll be tough to handle for Seattle. Zach Ertz, right? I think they can effectively move the ball down the field with short, intermediate passes versus his own coverage. Because Doug Peterson is very good at game planning in these big game situations. Defensively, I think it's relatively even from offensive line versus defensive line of the Eagles and the Seahawks. The Eagles do have a couple X factors, though. Brandon Graham has been really good this year for the most part, and Fletcher Cox has kind of turned it on as of late. If these two players can dominate, the Eagles will win the game. Because Russell Wilson was sacked 6 times in that game last time they played. If they can hit him, sack him, keep him within the pocket, keep him from making big plays, then the Eagles can definitely win. The running game of the Seahawks is not the same as it was in the first time they played. Marshawn is okay at this point. He's just a short yardage guy for the most part. Homer looked good versus San Francisco. And Russell Wilson has shown an ability to eat up some zone defenses like San Francisco's at time last week. Where I think the Eagles are in trouble is in a similar situation, but for a different reason. The Eagles tend to play very aggressive on defense at times. Schwartz gets sometimes too aggressive. And if that happens, I think Wilson can take advantage because I don't think the Eagles can afford to play that style of defense. Because I think Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf will burn whoever is covering them if they decide to play that style. They need to play a more conservative style of defense and just really hope they win up front. And if they don't win up front, it's going to be a long day for the Eagles. Because if they don't win up front, then that means they're going to have to get more aggressive to get after Russell Wilson, and that is where they're going to burn them for big plays, and that's not what you want if you're an Eagles fan. I think that the Seahawks will win. It's going to be so close. This, to me, is probably the toughest game to pick out of all of them because I want to pick the Eagles, honestly. I kind of just feel like I have to pick the Seahawks because they've been a better team, and I really think that they have the Eagles' number. Like, the Eagles don't seem to beat the Seahawks. I mean, like, the last 3 or 4 times they've played, Seahawks have won. The time they played this year, the Seahawks won. And when you look back at that game when they played, Russell Wilson actually missed a lot of big plays, and that game wasn't as close as the score indicated. So for all those reasons, I think this game is extremely well balanced. I think this game is really what it comes down to is the quarterback play, as I've stated. And I'm taking the Seahawks because I think Russell Wilson can slightly outplay Carson Wentz. And I like the playmakers of Seattle more than I like Philadelphia's in terms of creating some big plays. The thing I'm scared about for Seattle is the front of their defense and the front of their offense. If they're not able to create pressure on defense, it's going to be a long day. If they're not able to protect Russell Wilson, it's going to be a long day. But I do believe that Wilson, with decent protection, can do enough in this game to win. So I will pick the Seahawks to win 24-21 over the Eagles in a game that I think will be very, very exciting. And notice how in none of these games I picked an absolute blowout, which is fascinating. But that is my prediction for the Eagles and Seahawks. Those are my predictions for Wild Card Weekend. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, Gronk, spike the like button. Subscribe to the Bottom Line View.